Okay, we are live on stream, on the YouTube stream. You can find it at CEC Live if you look at and do a search in YouTube. Our next panel is Archer and Griner. Is it Griner or Greener? Griner. And I'll let them take the stage. All of this is available at CEC Live. If you search that on YouTube, and anybody that needs any of this information, you can download those videos for educational purposes and push out to anyone you'd like to push out to. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone, both live and virtually. By way of quick introduction, my name is Rob Seeger. I'm one of the partners at Archer and Griner. We're very thankful for the opportunity to be here today. Quickly, my role at Archer, I'm a partner. I manage our sports and entertainment group, and my day job is for 27 years now, I'm an immigration partner managing our global mobility group for the firm. We have a fantastic opportunity, I think a very unique opportunity today to really sort of talk about the divergent, virtual racing, virtual sports, e-gaming, but starting off by having a real professional athlete in the room. We're going to have an opportunity to hear soon from Christian Rasmussen, who's one of the rising stars in Indy racing today. It's going to be an amazing opportunity to speak to a real racer who's doing this sort of on a day-to-day basis, building a career in motorsports. What I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce our panel, and we're going to do this more sort of like a dialogue. So we have some questions, but we're going to keep it open because I find that those types of conversations go better. But the first person I want to introduce to you is Wes Zirkle. Wes, from Indiana, one of the preeminent attorneys in motorsports. Represents several drivers in Indy racing, but I actually don't, and we're happy at Archer to call Wes a friend, but I don't know of many people who could actually speak to really how motor racing, IndyCar racing works, and what that industry looks like. So, Wes, I'll let you introduce yourself, and then after you introduce yourself and a little bit about your sort of how you got to where you are, I have a couple questions on sort of the structure of how you see IndyCar working. So, Wes, please introduce yourself.
Well, thank you. As Rob said, my name is Wes Zirkle, and actually I do a lot of things, but I teach the law school at Indiana University. And the reason I tell you that is a lot of my students will ask, well, how do I get to be a sports lawyer? And I always jokingly say, well, you represent Real Monroe, James Dean, and Babe Ruth as a baby lawyer, and that's how it starts. And that's how I started my career. I started my career representing celebrities in Indianapolis, of all places, mostly celebrity estates. And from there, I happened to join what was then a very tiny motorsports agency owned by a guy named Zach Brown, not the musician. If you follow Formula One, Zach is now the CEO of McLaren. And so I was Zach's general counsel for 12 years, and when I went into private practice, it just so happened that most of my contacts were in motorsports. So I stayed in the industry, and about half of my practice is sports, and half is traditional, business law and those sorts of things. But my heart's really on the motorsports side. It's what I get excited about and look forward to talking about it. So, like I said, you want to understand how IndyCar and motorsport operates, right? So, I think before you get in and talk about the virtual space or simulated, you need to understand what the base business model looks like. And so, if you're unfamiliar with how it's structured, very quickly, the FIA in Paris sits at the top, and they sanction all motorsport in the world. Each country has its own organization that organizes racing events. In the United States, it's an organization called ACCIS. And there are 5 member clubs in ACCIS: IndyCar, NASCAR, NHRA, which is drag racing, sports cars. IMSA, thank you, and IMSA. So it's weird to think about NASCAR and IndyCar as a club, but they are clubs. And we have to follow the rules all the way through the FIA, and that's how they get insurance and that kind of thing. So we all are governed ultimately by an organization in Paris. The interesting thing is the FIA stays out of our hair because they don't know anything about turning left, right? American racing is a lot of oval racing, and in Europe it's straight road course. So they pretty much defer to ACCIS to run the show in the United States, but then we ultimately do report into the FIA internationally, which is how we get insurance, frankly. The FIA insurance and sport has safety protocols in place so that we can get insurance for events. So that's how it's structured.
So we were talking on the side about sort of bringing our conversations into this forum, specifically here in Atlantic City, one of the gaming capitals of the world. And we were talking about some of the meetings that you've had in your role within IndyCar with sort of decision makers and thought leaders within that industry. Could you give us a little sense of sort of what sort of some of those conversations about issues about gambling within motor racing, sort of some of the things that you've seen there?
Yeah, when the topic first came up, I remember a good friend of mine is the number 2 lawyer at IndyCar. He and I went to law school together, and we were having to be at a legal conference, and he sat down and said, "Okay, this is on my plate. What do you think about it?" The idea is like allowing gambling in IndyCar. And it was a really kind of an enjoyable conversation because we got to think about all the opportunity and kind of the things we have to pay attention to. And of course, what you're ultimately concerned about when you're writing rules, and IndyCar does now have rules about who can gamble and on what, is ensuring the integrity of the sport. That's what every professional sports league is worried about, is that if wagering interferes with what's happening on the court, on the field, on the track, what have you. So that was our number 1 priority. But it's especially challenging in IndyCar because if somebody wanted to throw a race, for instance, by being slow at a pit stop, it's like a half-second mistake. It's almost impossible to tell that somebody has done something intentionally to handicap a driver's ability to perform in a race. And that's partly because of the time, but also because each car has assigned to it, you've got 4 people that come over the ball, 5, 6, and you got engineers, mechanics, and probably 20 people assigned to a car who can all influence its outcome during a race, even down to strategy calls. Do we pit now? Do we pit later? And so those were the conversations about how do we monitor this, right? So they do have technology in place at races where they can monitor if they think somebody is intentionally making a mistake to influence the outcome of a race. Now they have to do it over time, but that technology does exist. And so protecting the integrity of the sport was always first and foremost when the series wrote its rules.
Actually, I think that's fascinating because like we all know the sort of traditional big 4 sports and how there's over the years people have talked about all the issues with gambling on professional sports and whether it's basketball guys missing shots on purpose or whatever the issues are. But to sort of just think about it in a sport like motor racing, how something can get into like a pit stop can change the outcome of a race. I don't think we actually think about that. So that's really fascinating. I mean,
or even a call to pit at a certain time, right? There are those judgment calls that exist solely within one person's expertise that you have to trust in the right thing.
Yeah, and I again think it's fascinating, even the infrastructure that the sport has developed to monitor that. It's fascinating, and it shows sort of the significance of the issue. So thank you, guys. The next person I want to introduce before we get to the most important person we're going to speak with today is Dave Weinstein. Dave is one of my colleagues at Archer, and Dave is in our our business and counseling group. So Dave's a business lawyer, but Dave has been in the gaming space for many years now, and sort of we were talking about last night about, virtual racing. We have a real racer here, and now we're talking about shifting over to virtual racing in the gaming industry. And so one of the things that Dave said he could talk to us about is sort of, Dave, what do you think the appetite for virtual racing is, within the gaming industry?
So, Rob, thank you. So, as we all know, there's a lot of racing simulators out there. There's a lot of games you can play. There's Forenzo, all these other games out there. Gran Turismo, that translates into a movie, and actually a racer, you can actually watch a movie with a book. And there's a lot of different opportunities out there for people to simulate racing, but what you don't see a lot of yet is wagering on that simulated racing. There is some opportunity out there, but there needs to be a groundswell to bring that in. And there is wagering. We see it now. It looks a lot like motorsports. It looks a lot like horse racing. These ones are things that you can do. Looks very similar. Bets are very similar. But what you don't see is what you could do, which you couldn't do with auto racing on its own, or with horse racing, is you can actually bring that into the bricks and mortar. You can bring that virtual race into the bricks and mortar, and you can cross-market that in a way you can't do some of these others. You could bring a professional driver to race against professional virtual drivers, professional gaming drivers, and actually translate those skills back and forth, and actually create a very different model environment, bring in people from multiple backgrounds into these bricks and mortar facilities. It just takes the vision and just like everything else, the actual investment to do it. And we'll be bringing those simulators in, bringing the games, bringing the parity systems you need to do it, but you can actually then have multiple people from different backgrounds coming into these facilities, not just your gaming people, but you could be bringing in the NASCAR fan, the IndyCar fan, you could bring in the NHRA fan as well. To one, see their professional driver, but two, because that's what they follow. It's a different field, and it's more realistic in some ways because you bring the simulators in. There's actually pedals. There's actually steering wheel. You can actually some of these simulators will actually give you the same turn, trying to simulate the G-force that you're going to have. So it gives you the opportunity to do something very different in a bricks and mortar environment, and it just gives the vision and the investment.
So from a vision standpoint, you can see how dynamic that could be. But from your day-to-day work as an attorney and representing clients that are trying to build infrastructure within esports, talk to us about, from your perspective, what your clients are saying. What are the potential, like, the hurdles? What are the limitations to that?
Well, the limitations there is that you're trying to compete against people like the state. Because I mean, really, that's what it comes down to. The limitation is that your average gamer needs to be invited. They need to have a reason to show up. And if you don't give them a reason to show up, they're going to be able to do everything they want to do from the convenience of stream it, and watch it, and while we're here sitting in a bricks and mortar facility. If you don't give them a reason to come here, they're not going to come. They can do everything they do by betting on their phone. They can wager on that, on whatever they're looking on the phone. They can stream the entire thing through Twitch or whatever else they're watching. Get the entire experience that they're looking for, and have no interaction directly with the bricks and mortar. So all the ancillary benefits that come from them coming into the facility.
And that this is becoming even more relevant today, because we all know what happened with sort of when esports started, and then or even some companies were trying to create venues dedicated, right, to esports and gaming, and then COVID came and everything got shut down. So I think in the second wave of now, people are coming back out and we're starting business again. I think that provides, right, that real opportunity for that kind of creative thinking in how to sort of not only get people excited about, what's the next big thing in esports, but how to frankly monetize it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to talk about the first wave. And the first wave is actually how Western met. It was over a drone that one of my clients was purchasing one of his clients' drone companies at the very beginning of the first wave, and then we continued with other transactions in the space together. Wes had some developers that he had represented. I represented some bricks and mortar individuals, and they had come together to try to create something special. The bricks and mortar obviously has been a little difficult even outside of Atlantic City or elsewhere because you still got to drag people. And right now, your traditional handler is the same person that it was 15 years ago. You haven't yet broken through the brain the next wave of people here, and I think the statistic that is 25% of the population now is somewhere between the ages of 18 and 30 and 40. I think that's about right. So I mean, you have this whole group of individuals who can actually be your next wave of people to come and visit facilities like this that you are not marketing to because their viewpoint of the world is not the same. They don't want the same things. They want something good. They want that experience to be good.
No, I think you're onto it. I think that is the both the challenge and the opportunity of creating something that's exciting enough to get those stakeholders out of their homes and into these brick and mortar facilities, and then that leads to the natural progression of monetizing that and based on wagering. So speaking of real, live, exciting sports, let's move this along. And I want to transition with this sort of thought, or put this in your head. And let's start with virtual racing. And I can tell you this from my own experience because my daughter is a young woman and owns the Formula One virtual game at home and can go around and pick Monaco or wherever she wants to race. But let me tell you something. If you ever have the opportunity to go to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and just stand there, you will understand what this sport is all about. It's literally game-changing experience. And so that's why I'm so excited to talk with Christian, because frankly, this gentleman is doing what we all wanted to do when we grew up, is be a race car driver. And he's doing it. And so, yeah, we'll contrast back to the virtual racing, what that looks like, but let's have this opportunity to talk to a real driver. And so, Christian, first of all, thank you for the time to come here. Christian's in season, he's training, he'll tell you about his career and what he's doing, but took time out to say, you know what, I want to talk to these folks about what it's like to be a professional race car driver. And he'll tell you it's not easy, but when you get there, it's the opportunity of a lifetime. So that being said, Christian, I don't want to give your bio. So if you would, just tell us a little bit about yourself, and more importantly, how did you get into this industry?
Yeah, like you said, it started off a dream of a 5-year-old kid that wanted to be a race car driver, right? And I grew up in Copenhagen, Denmark, and went through all the karting rinks back home in Denmark. Got into racing through my family. My dad owns a car dealership, so there was always cars. That was an interesting thing. And then when my cousin started racing go-karts on the Sunday, I thought, you know what, why shouldn't I try that? So I started racing go-karts, went up through the karting rinks, won the Danish National Championship in 2015. After that, I moved on to open wheel race cars, did 2 years of that in Denmark, and then basically moved my career to the United States in 2018. Did that because of the scholarship systems that are in place over here in the United States. You can go from the lower tier open wheel Formula racing classes to all the way up to the NCT IndyCar series without having to find full budgets each year if you
with the championships. So that's been how I've been able to progress my career, been winning on all levels of the road to Indy, and that has basically created the way for me into IndyCar for next year.
So as you can see, Christian's a humble guy. But what I wanted to sort of drill down a little bit deeper on is in this is where you have to sort of, not be arrogant, but talk. It's really hard, right? This is, these young drivers, Christian in particular comes from a different country, is in a different part of, in Indiana, trying to build a career. And it's not just racing. It's the training, it's the working with professionals like Wes, finding sponsors. But what I think we all understand, because we all, we're here in Eagles country, we all understand that, how many kids grow up with a football and how very few people make it to the NFL. It's the same in motor racing. A lot of folks start with a dream to go into karting, but that road it might as well be a mountain. So Christian, just talk to us a little bit about some of the sort of things that along the way, your opinion, kind of helped you get to just sign your first Indy contract.
Yeah, the big thing about racing and doing it in racing is that you have to basically pay all your way up to the top level to become a professional driver. You're basically paying for your own education. You kind of sidetrack it with the college education. And then when you get out on the other side, that's when you can make money. But the problem with racing is that it is very, very, very expensive. So not a lot of people can afford to do that. So I've been very fortunate to have met some great people along the way that have been helping me to secure sponsorships through my own network. Have had people that have chipped in, and then besides that, obviously winning the championships has been helping me to progress my career.
So thank you for that. And then I want to ask Wes a question, because what you said there actually bridged to, I think, one of the things that we all need to understand about IndyCar as an industry, that integrity is really important. We're talking a lot of money, a lot of investment, so integrity is the key to the sport. So Wes, if you wouldn't mind just sort of from your seat, what you can tell us about how that the industry monitors that.
Yeah, so it kind of before we do that, I wanted, because Christian's been very, very humble. I met him 3 years ago, and I don't represent drivers. That's changed, obviously. He's the best driver I've ever seen in my life. And I've had people come up to me and say, he's as good as Scott Dixon was at this age. If you don't know, Scott Dixon is the best IndyCar driver in history, and he's still driving at 43 years old. It takes an extraordinary amount of money to do what he does. Anywhere from about $350,000 to the lowest level, all the way up to last year's contract was $1.25 million, and that was a sweetheart deal because the team wanted it. It's massively expensive to do this. Now he's a pro, and he's actually going to get paid, which you kind of about. It's like we pinch ourselves. Oh my gosh, it's going to probably start making money. But so now he's part of this ecosystem that is very high dollar, as you can imagine. So, and I echo what Rob said. I'm delighted that you said that, because I took these guys to the Speedway, and they were hooked. They got it instantly. So if you get a chance to see an IndyCar race, especially one in Indianapolis, you got it. It's the coolest thing I've ever seen. But the teams are big outfits. The smallest teams are $20, $25 million operations. The biggest team are $100 million operations annually. And there's a lot riding on what these people do. And so it's an unusual situation. If you're a lawyer, I represent him. I also represent Ed Carpenter Racing as a general counsel. You'll be driving for Ed Carpenter Racing. Gosh, how do we do that? Well, I continue to represent Ed throughout the deal. We got a friend of mine to represent him, so it wouldn't be conflict. But what I've been working on over the past year was not only getting Ed and the general manager to watch Christian on track, they do that. But to understand the type of person he is. And I think if you follow the NFL, there are certain people, like I'm from Indianapolis. Indianapolis likes to draft or recruit certain types of players. That maybe say the Raiders would draft a different type of player. It's kind of similar. Ed is a very just level-headed, kind of ordinary guy. And he likes drivers that are good people, who are solid, who represent his organization well. And so as we started looking at people like, Christian's a good guy. Christian's a good guy. He's like, what's his family like? His family's great. Mom, dad are awesome. Brother's great. And all of these, because, frankly, the drivers, actually, the teams, they can't stand drivers that have parents that are high maintenance, right? So all of this goes into it. In selecting the driver, unfortunately, it all worked out in our favor. So I don't know if I answered your question the right way, but organizations, I say, have different, varying levels of tolerance for pushing the boundaries. And it just so happened that Christian fits Ed's profile of how he wants to operate the racing team.
No, that actually was perfect, because it segues nicely to the comment that if you're not doing it now, you really need to pay attention to IndyCar, Christian in particular. This is a class sport and a class operation, and these drivers are people that you can actually get behind.
I'll tell you one thing real quick. Christian and I were talking today at lunch. This coming season is the best crop of drivers we've seen in 2 decades. This is going to be a phenomenal season to watch on TV. NBC and Peacock, don't forget. All right.
Awesome. So let's switch to the virtual racing, and just for perspective, Christian, is the simulator something that you have or do utilize, and just on a general basis, what's your experience with that?
I used to have a kind of a lower spec simulator in my home that I used a lot, and it was great to learn the different tracks. It was a great way to interact with other race car drivers as well that you kind of become friendly with. And you can go online, and when people play Call of Duty, then we would play iRacing instead and go race each other. So I kind of grew up doing that, and now the whole simulation world means something else to me. We use big simulators together with Chevrolet to basically develop our IndyCar on it. So we basically have the exact car, and we can make all the changes that we can do in real life on the simulator. And we try to do that to improve our course at the real tracks, to see that we have already tried those changes and we know in which direction we can go with the real car.
So, and we had a really nice conversation, again, from the perspective of the audience, just how different, obviously simulated racing is from real racing. Real racing, you have to be physically fit, you have to know what the car is doing, and frankly, it's a lot more dangerous than sitting in your room on a simulator. So to that point, Christian, we know that simulators are used as a tool, but if you were very, very cool to sort of speak optically about how if you take your day-to-day job, all the engineers, all the things that go into a practice session, do you see any? What do you believe are the limitations to using a simulator, if there are any?
I think the higher budget simulator you get, the lower limitations are. Yeah. There's always going to be limitations with the simulator. You're never going to get the G-forces of driving a real car and stuff like that. And especially on the level that most people have a simulator on, it's going to be a stationary sim. So even that, you won't be able to feel the car as you will in real life. On the flip side, the models of cars and tracks and stuff are very well. They're all laser scanned and everything is done super well. So you can get a feeling of driving a real car at a very affordable rate compared to driving a real car, which I think is very valuable.
And this doesn't happen to Christian, but he made it. I thought it was a funny comment about it. It's a lot cheaper to wreck in the simulator than on a live track. So I think that sort of tells us everything we need to know. So from your perspective, Christian, and then we'll go back to Dave for a minute. Where do you see, or what have you seen the use of simulators in your sport? Do you see it sort of on the rise, and other drivers are getting more? Where do you see this going?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely on the rise, and I think it rises together with all other tech. You know, everything gets more advanced, it gets better, and so will all the simulation in terms of racing. It's all going to get better. It's all going to get, you know, more advanced, and we're probably going to be using it more and more. I haven't been used to using a lot of simulation work going up through the junior ranks, so it's something that I'm getting more acclimated to now that I'm in IndyCar, and to really get to learn on how we use the simulator to improve the real car. But no, I think it's only going to go one way. I think it's going to go up, and I think it's going to get better, and I think it's going to get more valuable for us as the real race car drivers and race car teams.
Terrific. And sort of the last question that I wanted to ask you, more for the benefit of all your new fans, is so Christian, I know you're going home for the holidays and then you come back. So what's next? What does your season coming up look like? What do you need to do, and when's your first race?
So what's next is I'm actually jumping in the sim on tomorrow. So I'm flying directly here back to Indy, going back to Charlotte to do a sim day. And next thing for me, I'll be in the real car in December, testing in Florida for preparing for the new season coming. First race is in March in St. Petersburg, Florida. And then it basically goes all the way through September.
Well, I'm sure for all of us we'll say the same thing. But thank you for giving us that insight into not only you, but sort of how you use the simulator in your profession. And obviously, all the best of luck to you. And we have about 6 minutes left. And I just wanted to ask Dave one last question from sort of the legal side, because we talked about the sort of the limitations, perhaps, of putting virtual racing sort of here in the casino industry. And the one thing that struck me was the age. So the age of a lot of the folks that are drawn to simulators are sort of on the younger side. How does that challenge, is that overcome within this industry?
It's the same problem with every industry. It's finding your demographic. And once you identify the demographic that you're looking at, it's then finding what they're interested in, getting them to come to you, or meet them where they are. And what I mean by that is, if you know the demographic has interest already in whether it's it's iRacing, or they have an interest in actual motorsports itself, there's multiple ways to reach out to them to get them to your facility, to invite them in, whether it be to bring them in because you are really into the sports book and you really advance the sports book side of it in the actual racing itself, and actually promote it because there's value there. Now, one of the things you have with any racing you don't have with NASCAR, so there's just the season, and Wes was talking about the way the season's set up. NASCAR is a much longer season. NASCAR has a more integrated iRacing concept built into it that, during the pandemic and the beginning of the pandemic, as well, IndyCar was promoting and pushing their online iRacing concept because there wasn't in-person racing. So they were actually encouraging the drivers and getting them out there and doing it. Once you get that part out, and if you grab onto that portion of it, and get the professional drivers, in my opinion, to find the value in being in the simulator to reach a different audience, because while the sports themselves are important in how they look at how they promote and advance and how they want to be viewed by the public, as we all learn with NIL and everything else that's out there, a lot of the advancement for value creation is in the individual. So if the drivers see the value and they're encouraged to see the value in being part of the virtual racing as well, and the seasons, the way they break down, can be worked so that they can also race virtually. You could bring in different people, not just the professionals, but you could bring in the professional gaming, the iDriver, to race in those types of situations. And they don't translate 100%. I'm going to actually, we should talk about that more, because they don't translate 100%, because the online, iGaming, iDriving is very different in a lot of aspects than being a professional driver. Professional drivers, as you said before, work out 6 days a week. They have very specific muscle groups that are incredibly strong to take care of the chief forces that they're going to feel and drive. Totally different from iGaming. They do it differently. And one of the things that I want to actually ask Christian about is he was mentioning that the way that, at the very end of the simulations, he was saying, but there's certain things in the simulator that just doesn't translate to the track and vice versa. Can you talk about that? That was fascinating.
Yeah, it's important to say that driving simulators is not the same as driving a real car. There's definitely some stuff that we use in the real car that doesn't translate to the sim and vice versa. But a lot of what goes into driving a race car in real life, all the techniques that we use, how we use our throttle application or our brake lead off or how we turn into the corner, a lot of that stuff will translate onto the sim. But then some of the sim stuff about getting the most out of the car in the simulator is not always gonna transfer over to the real car. I think some does, definitely does, and you've seen that in the past through the Gran Turismo movie and all of that stuff. You've seen sim racers rise to be real race car drivers, because I think some of it does translate, and also because of the simulators that's gotten so advanced nowadays that it is getting closer, but not everything translates across the board.
And the one thing that we were talking about as well, that as his attorney and manager are going to be aware of, is having him develop bad habits. He talked about pushing the car and sim in a way that he wouldn't necessarily be on track. He has a contractual obligation to not only be physically fit, but mentally fit. And so if he continually does something that will create bad habits, not only do we have potential reach there because he's not maintaining his mental fitness the way he should be, he won't perform well on track. So it's challenging. As the technology gets better, I agree with Christian, it'll be much more valuable tools for drivers, but when I first met him, like, you like to play Forza, and so he's like, no, I don't want to develop bad habits. And they have to be careful about what technology they use, because it has to translate well on track. Is that fair?
Yeah, and I'll add something for that, right? I'm a race car driver. I want to be competitive, right? So if I go online gaming, I'm gonna probably most likely do whatever the sim tells me to do to be fast in the simulator, so I can beat the other guys, just because that's how I'm wired in my brain. So that's kind of why I stepped off in it a little bit, coming up through the junior ranks in open wheel formulas. So I didn't train a lot of those bad habits, and that would translate into the real car, because it's easy. If you have a simulator, it's easy to drive 2-3 hours in a day and do that day after day if you don't have anything else going on. So that's a lot of repetition, that's muscle memory, and that will eventually translate into the real car for good or for bad.
And with that, that's the final. Let's let that be the final word. We're at time. So I'll wrap it up in the way I started. It means a whole heck of a lot to us, Wes. Christian, you came to speak with us. Thank you for your insight, and good luck next week.
Thank you. You are physically fit. That's good. Yeah, I like to think so. Okay, I think we're going to just have our next discussion, or actually it's a keynote from our Jared Brunner, which is, we're going to take a break now. So for about 20 minutes, and that'll be at about 2 o'clock. So.
Last cycle, you won last cycle. I said, okay, speakers that long. With that, and sure. This election's something. Yeah, I think, I would be surprised. I don't know. I don't know what else. Assuming it was like this, I think it should go. Let's see how the whole way. I don't think it'll work. So what is that? And then he has to stand up. I think he's saying. Right, he's got to do it. So I don't see that. For us, that's the key job. Take care. Nice meeting you. Very nice. Yeah, no, it's all. No. Take care. Thank you. So that doesn't necessarily mean. Absolutely, absolutely. So, that's why I think, yeah.
VR. Good luck. Very fun. Fly out. That's just be bad. It's just fly down. Show. I thought about it, I mean, how do we get there? So, two tables? Yeah, that's how we get on screws. Two of those, seven?
Well, and this is the store, lots of gyms. Lots yes, yes.
No problem. That's no problem. That's good.
And the one.
No, he's going.
Yeah.
Susie said, "Why?" They're in, because they finally learned the value.
got some, it's late. My wife and I. But like, half the places that they were further away. Oh, you did, so. So how you're going to, we're thinking about this.
Yeah, so we did, we're going back to this, week.
Okay. That's it.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah, but they're not, so much.
Nice.
If you're Asian, yeah, it's amazing.
We may flip values too, but significant time. Why was it more sure? Yeah, and then that's sort of the value. So obviously,
So we're gonna fly out to Vegas, spend 3 days in Vegas.
really,
Yeah, so no, three days, you know, in July and August is fine. Go for 3 days and then go to Vegas and then back to no, not quite as built, but it wasn't open. So I saw it basically, but it wasn't open.
not going to here. Back here. Yeah, voting session, like, yeah. I'm flying on Wednesday morning. Flying out. Well. Yeah, that's and kind of my attitude. This is what I was flying. At the end weekend, days. I mean, like it's crazy. So my that's like I'm like about it, but I don't mind that. I don't mind that. I got stuff to do Friday, so I'm not planning Friday. Yeah. It's not all it works. But why not? So I need no, I answer. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna have our last keynote, and then we'll have a final discussion, streaming in a bunch of folks online. This is all live. If anybody needs it, at CEC Live on YouTube. So anytime you want to do that. So our next speaker is William Caruso. He's going to be speaking about cannabis in the state of New Jersey. So, William, it's all yours.
Good afternoon, greetings for those of you that are here with us and those who are here virtually. My name is Bill Caruso. I chair Archer's Government Affairs and Cannabis Practice for the law firm. And I was asked today to come talk a little bit about some intersections between esports, gaming, cannabis legalization, and the promises for Atlantic City. When I was first asked about attending this event, I thought it would be better to have the ambassador from Atlantic City, Mayor Marty Smalls, join us. Unfortunately, he has some other important duties today. Today in New Jersey is the Super Bowl of politics. It's election day, and our entire New Jersey State Legislature is on the ballot. Having some conversations with some of my friends here that are in the political circles, we don't think that control of the legislature is up, but you never know. But these things all have ramifications for what happens in our industries. We don't think sometimes about the influence between government and business, but it's there. And as the former president in the Wayback Machine, the first president I ever identified with when I was growing up, I'm a child of the 80s, Ronald Reagan used to say, the scariest words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And sort of understood that in two different contexts. My career started in a very weird time in New Jersey politics. Prior to working at Archer, I did 2 tours of duty for 2 decades in the federal and state government. I was the chief of staff to United States congressmen, and I had the pleasure of serving 2 speakers of the New Jersey General Assembly as the executive director and the head of staff. And so I saw the intersection between good government, good politics, and industry and advocacy. I saw good examples of it where industries would self-police, and they would self-police against bad actors or bad situations, and try to regulate themselves, whether that was internally or going to state and federal and governments and working with them to either adopt statutory or regulatory laws to help rein in outliers in the industry or police an industry and set standards. But what I also realized is sometimes where government can run amok. And I've watched that in my more recent time, being outside of government, where not everything is a hammer and a nail. We don't need to hit every single thing. Sometimes letting industry develop and develop without government influence is important. But this intersection between cannabis legalization and esports betting is an interesting one for me. When I started working in 1997, at 22 years old for a United States congressman, I can honestly tell you that I think my past experiences with cannabis or my past experience with gaming would be anywhere relevant to the world I was entering into in the political arena. And it's odd to see in a very short amount of time, really 2 decades, how the world has changed significantly. It's not changed by accident. It's changed because of significant work in an advocacy space. It's also changed because people found a way to promote an industry, not behaviors, but really bring together sometimes controversial concepts to talk about growth in jobs, talk about growth in different opportunities to expand existing industry spaces and complement those spaces, and then blow the doors off of new economies that are being created. Atlantic City is an interesting microcosm for this experiment. And it's also an interesting microcosm or example of failed government in a lot of ways, or prior failed government. The background of this place is in the late 70s, right around the time where sort of I was born and coming up in the world. Atlantic City began this experiment of legalized gambling. Again, something that the federal government did not condone and sort of allowed outliers. And, for a time, New Jersey's gambling experiment was the rage. It was the envy of all. Atlantic City was in its heyday, really from the late 70s into the 80s and early 90s. We saw revenues grow from really zero to $3 billion to the ceiling of $5 billion in around 2006 when the industry peaked. But the industry peaked. And the reason the industry peaked was to some extent competition from outside. More states got in the gambling train. But it was also a lack of vision, to some extent local corruption, but we'll push that aside for a second, because I think that there's things that industry can control and things that we can. And I think the thing that look at in the example of Atlantic City, both its past failures and hopefully future opportunities, are the lack of vision. And you think about where we're standing today, we're standing in a major mecca for a variety of entertainment concerns. But that's not the vision that folks saw. I was talking with one of my colleagues today. Our last speaker is racing off to the airport to catch his flight back to go back and do what he does in the IndyCar space. He's driving to Philadelphia. We have an international airport that I can hit a tee shot from where I'm standing right now. It is an underutilized resource. It always has been. It is the fault of the industry, and it is the fault of the government here for leaving that crown jewel undeveloped. If you're sitting in Oklahoma or Athens, Greece right now, and you're looking to get away for a 5-day weekend that has entertainment, beaches, fantastic restaurants, gambling, esports, everything that you could possibly imagine, this place doesn't show up on the map. Because in order to get here, you've got to fly into Philadelphia International Airport, the worst airport in America, and take some sort of ground transportation to get here, which is at least 40 minutes to an hour. It's very difficult. So we start talking about holistic approaches to changing this venue. We start talking about the concert between public and private partnerships and what exists for this industry to succeed and this industry to take advantage of what Atlantic City has to offer. That international airport is part of the keys. Now, the good news is, despite the focus for years and years and years on what we affectionately have called blue hairs on buses, right? The ability to take people from New York, Pennsylvania, and the surrounding areas, the senior citizen crowd, and bring them in here, maybe have them stay overnight, see a show, and hit the slots and hit some gambling tables. That ship sailed years and years ago. What has changed now is a multi-entertainment destination. My colleague David Weinstein previously was mentioning people have to want to come for something, particularly in this industry where you can log in via anywhere in the world really and be in touch. Why do you want to be here in person? And I think the examples here are kind of unending, right? Do you like the beach? Do you like a warm beachfront setting? Are you looking to see major concerts and major entertainment acts and shows? Are you looking to see engage in some of the best dining experiences in the free world, certainly in America? All of these things are here, and then the gaming overlay comes in, whether it's slots, whether it's tables, whether it's esports gaming, whether it's the venue itself coming in and actually participating in something, and the sponsorships and all the different associated support that goes along for the conference, or the actual betting, right, that's going on now that's been legalized here. The sky is the limit in terms of what's to come, but that's not going to happen without some collective support. Now, we've also had a new experiment. I had the pleasure of, when leaving government and joining Archer, of dabbling a little as an advocate. I helped to create, as one of the founders in 2014 and 2015, the legalized cannabis movement. We formed New Jersey United for Marijuana Reform back in 2014, 2015. It was an organization built upon racial social justice, but it was with a goal of creating a new industry. Now, New Jersey experimented with legalized medical cannabis back in 2009. Then Governor Corzine signed into law. Governor Corzine lost his election. Governor Chris Christie, you may know him from his presidential run right now, chose not to implement that law, then threatened with a lawsuit from the Democratic legislature, and then implemented a medical law that languished for a decade. We never fully realized the true benefits of what medical cannabis could be here in New Jersey during Governor Christie's time. It wasn't his thing. Fast forward, though, to this movement and what other states had done successfully, like Colorado and others, and a new governor, Governor Phil Murphy, who's the current governor in New Jersey, with a vision towards creating a new industry. And I'm happy to report that in 2020, I was the co-chair of the most successful ballot question campaign ever in the history of the state of New Jersey. We won the ballot question in a pandemic by significant margins. Whether you slice it as medical cannabis or adult use cannabis, but medical cannabis right now polls better than clean air does. So the popularity of this topic has grown exponentially, but that's great, but what does it all mean and how does it fit together? Well, here in this venue, it's a hot mess because you have highly regulated industry in the casino world that doesn't want this bumping in because cannabis is illegal at the federal level. And so we're operating in this bananas-like environment where a state government is saying, we're good with this. The federal government's saying, we are not good with this. And it then bangs into certain regulated industries, not in a good way. And so we really need to think outside the box and how this is going to work. In addition, be forward-looking to where the laws are going to change. Now, for those of you that pay attention to Congress, God bless you, those folks can't agree that today is Tuesday down there as you watch on Full Display regularly. However, there is significant bipartisan support for some sort of reform that's going to come along in cannabis to normalize this. And really where we're getting to is the destigmatization of cannabis as a drug, whether that's the rescheduling conversation that's going on at the federal level now, or something more that would be akin to a recognition at the federal level of a legalization or decriminalization, and all that goes along with that. Conversations about safe banking, conversations about recognizing states' rights, all different things, allowing medical institutions to engage in research and allowing companies then to start developing medically researched drugs, which really sends this industry off into two different tangents, right? A medical industry looks a lot more like big pharma right now, and a recreational industry that probably is going to look a little bit like what you see in the beer world, whether it's the big beer distributors or craft brew industries, if you're familiar with those. But that's where this puck is headed. But in New Jersey, we're 10 steps down the field already. And what does that mean here? Well, it means that the mayor, the state legislature, and the governor in this state have opened the door for success for this region, for this industry, and a combining of interesting industries that complement each other. AC's already been built on gambling. It's here to stay. It'll be here for forever. It is no longer the cash cow that's going to keep this place going, and many leaders have recognized that. Cobbling together multiple entertainment venues and multiple entertainment industries, though, has been the goal of this mayor and some of the leaders, including my friend, late Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver, who passed this August. But under the weird situation that Atlantic City's in under state receivership, the Lieutenant Governor and the Department of Community Affairs have significant purview over what happens here in Atlantic City. In addition to local government, state government, there's also a casino reinvestment authority that has some authority on deciding, particularly related to land use and other things. There's a lot of government involved in what's going to happen in the success of this industry or this area. And as a result, the industries interact with these levels of government at the local level, at the state level, and to some extent now at the federal level. And finding common ground so that the casino interests see the value of esports gaming and see the value of cannabis for their consumers that they're all trying to attract here. That's been the common thread that more recently has been developed, because before, casinos didn't want to talk about cannabis at all. It was a waste of their time. They wanted to lock people in their boxes to soak as much cash out of pockets as they possibly can, and maybe have them go see a show and have a nice dinner too. That was the goal. That was the model. It's no longer the model. The model is to have a holistic approach to figure out how everything fits in. And while they're here in this casino or this hotel, being able to advertise a variety of broad opportunities that exist in an entertainment area and attract in major conferences, attract in different types of consumers to come into Atlantic City and benefit from all the city has to offer, whether it's the new water park that just opened, whether it's a fantastic new restaurant venue that's just opened, or a major esports gaming conference that's going to attract in competitors, those that want to place wagers, and other major sponsors and industries that want to grow here. But there's tangential work that's going on here too that's exciting. We have one of the finest universities in New Jersey reimagining who it wants to be and what it wants to be. Stockton College, which really for a number of years now has been dabbling in really listening to what industry wants, whether it's tourism and hospitality, whether it's developing esports gaming, a curriculum and a focus on technology, or perhaps one of the best cannabis curriculums in anywhere that I've seen in developing educational training and programs to train and produce some of the best skilled employees and leaders in industries going forward. In order to kind of have it all put together, you need every component. You need a good government that sees the vision. You need industry that's going to partner, and you need the education sector that's going to lean in and say, we see where the world is going to be, and we want to train our students to be there down the line. And it takes a minute to get there, but we're on our way. We're moving forward. We're moving quickly down a path now that all of these parts are all coming together. Now, that's the good news. The good news is we've gotten the attention of those that matter. We've made significant headway into where we want to go as a state, as an industry, as industries, I should say, but we're not done yet. We're not even close to done. And the challenge now becomes, going back to that famous line from Ronald Reagan, whether it was sports betting, whether it was esports, whether it was cannabis, emerging industries that had challenged statutory frameworks on the ability to allow their industries to grow or even function, needed government to act. They needed government to work with them to allow this work to continue or to actually start. At some point, you want government out. You don't want government over-regulating. And the challenge becomes, where is that fine line? Where there are pieces of legislation now being developed in New Jersey's legislature that are going to regulate esports, that are going to further regulate cannabis. And now it's deciding whether or not they're needed, whether or not they're helping, whether or not they are doing too much. And it is really time for the industry to really pay attention. Federally, there's obviously a lot that still can be done, but at the state level, making sure that you're keeping an eye on what is going on, what is being developed both to proactively help the industry grow, what is going on from economic development standpoint to incentivize new growth in this industry, what is going on to help break down barriers for transportation or investment, particularly here in a place like Atlantic City that has so much potential. What are the positives that are going on, but stopping the negatives, because government is dumb. Government doesn't always know what it's doing. It needs industry to explain the ramifications of their brilliant decisions or ideas and how they're going to impact real world. And I realized that 10 years ago coming to Archer. When I joined Archer and Griner, I knew nothing about the private sector and how to take clients that had ideas or had issues and turn those into concepts. My deal was, I used to have people run at me in government with their hair on fire and say, we have a problem, or you're about to cause us a problem, we need to stop or fix it. This is a different world of being focused, working with industry groups like this to really collaborate together and look at best practice, look at what's going on in other jurisdictions, and marry this up and stopping bad things from happening. We're doing that right now in cannabis. Cannabis is a great overlay for where we are today in the esports world, because cannabis didn't exist a decade ago, really. The plant did, but the legalization and the mature industry that's starting to develop really didn't. And the stigma change happened almost overnight, but the work continues. And right now in New Jersey, we're having a debate over who should have control over an industry? Do we need a separate regulator? Should it just be normalized without a regulator? We're having conversations right now about what can be done to help local governments understand, particularly a place like Atlantic City, what can and can't happen within the boundaries of a town. And not every city wants this, and not every city in the state of New Jersey wants exactly the same thing. There are opportunities that we have not even fully realized yet. In a city like Atlantic City, delivery from a cannabis operator inside of the city or in the surrounding area to a hotel, and how is that going to work? Consumption lounges, which have been contemplated but not realized yet, which is really the ability to consume cannabis in a more global setting rather than in a private setting, and then monetizing that and turning this into something that might look much like a bar would. But right now, the current regs don't allow cannabis and liquor to cohabitate with one another. So still figuring those issues out. And like I said at the outset of this conversation, understanding what is allowed with the absence of law at the federal level, given that there are some significantly important issues in the regulated community that governs casinos and that governs other areas of industry here. There may be overlap in where cannabis prohibition, unfortunately, would bump into this. For example, I mean, in this industry alone, investors, participant or audience members, and bettors have no issue with cannabis. Participants, though, because of the rules, would, because of substance violations. And what happens inside of the rule system, particularly as legalization happens and medical expands, and we're dealing with this in labor context, which is a whole nother tangential issue of cannabis law now, where employers that do not want to have anti-cannabis policies are challenged to do so because of the absence of federal law or prohibition of federal law. And industries like this are impacted similarly. It's trying to find sense in the absence of law, particularly in a labor law setting, of who can use and who can be treated for cannabis, or who can use cannabis on a weekend and then come back to their job where they may be trigger a federal drug test or something of this sort. And how do you test for impairment? States are still grappling with these issues right now. And this industry is not far into that. This is another area of what I'll say normal industry that has to grapple with the abnormal cannabis laws. I think down the line from where we're going right now, we look at the similarities between the challenges in cannabis and the challenges in growth in esports. Both nascent industries, both out there in a aggressive effort to attract in investor dollars in a very, very difficult market right now. But both with significant upside on the glide path down the line in terms of where we're headed. I don't think anymore in either industry it's really a question of will there be success. I think it's now a question of where will the successes be. I think Atlantic City has positioned itself very well on both the cannabis front, esports gaming, and gaming revenue just generally because of how it's been situated over time. But it didn't happen by accident. It happened because there were really thoughtful folks that took hold of a growing industry and helped to shepherd in good laws and good support to make sure that the regulators, the legislators, several different executives at the local level and the mayors and obviously at the state level and governors were educated to understand the importance of this industry, an industry that neither which really existed and had to be envisioned. Now, how do we see cannabis and esports bumping into each other in a positive way? Well, had an interesting conversation about a year ago with some of the leaders in the hotel and gaming space here in Atlantic City. And rightfully so, they were concerned. Rightfully so, they didn't really understand either. But I think what they understand now is this is at least a market, both of which they don't understand, maybe don't even participate in. A couple of the folks around the table that we're sitting with had never tried cannabis before and had never really participated in any sort of online gaming of any sorts. I submit to you, I had a college life. I was and am a cannabis user. But I also will admit to you that one of the reasons why I'm here as a lawyer is I got through my 4 years of law school. I went at night by being a SOCOM player. I was a beta tester for one of the early versions of SOCOM when PlayStation unveiled this new rage of online gaming, or at least at the time through a PS2 console. I kind of understood both of these worlds, but never envisioned where we'd be here and talking about them being major support structures for a interesting renaissance going on in Atlantic City. And the ability to attract in, I'm going to be 50 this year, but people of my age and everyone underneath, my children are soon to be 18, 15, and 13. And there is so much nexus in that space now to where we're going, both present and future in the e-gaming crowd. Now, it's obviously a difference that, for cannabis, it's limited to 21 and over. Our laws only allow, for good reason, folks 21 and over. But there's a major component in the entertainment space now to folks that want to come in for a gaming conference, to be part of that, to be staying here in Atlantic City, to be involved in some of the entertainment aspects of this city, and then being able to be cannabis consumers, cannabis tourists, if you will, here in a region that really is just starting to crack into this market. In addition to that, we're going to see Atlantic City really, I think, explode with consumption lounges. And some of that's going to look a lot like a bar scene, a lot like an entertainment venue. What we're seeing the largest explosion in what I'll say cannabis space right now is in the infused beverage market. And, if you have experience with cannabis, there's edibles, there's smoking, there's topical creams, there's vaping. But the infused beverage market is really where I think a lot of the future is going to go. And some of it will be much like you see in a soft drink world. It's seltzers, infused low dose THC. You could see a situation in a consumption lounge space where someone is consuming multiple beverages over the course of an evening with a light buzz, similar to what you would get in a cocktail party or in a bar setting, consuming multiple beverages. That is a model that really didn't exist a couple of years ago. And this concept, which we've heard about for at least half a decade of a consumption lounge, really didn't fit a real model. We're starting to see these develop now. And in a venue like Atlantic City, it can explode and really be something. And so stay tuned on that front. Jersey is governed, much like our gaming industry is, by an external regulator. We have a legislature. We have all the accoutrements of a local government. We have the executive branch, and housed in the executive branch is a brand new state body called the Cannabis Regulatory Commission, modeled after our Casino Control Commission that governs what can go on here in gaming. Those regulators are all recently appointed. This is an organization with an executive director, my friend Jeff Brown, who likes to coin a phrase, New Jersey was building their plane while they were flying the plane. Happily, that plane has been flying for a while now. We've got wings, we've got a tail, we've got a rudder, we've got props, we're good to go. The question now is where are we going? And the regulator has populated the state with a significant amount of, we'll call them wannabe licenses, whether it's on the retail front, the cultivation front, and the manufacturing front. And so the pipeline is basically full right now for the next entrepreneurs. Every day we're seeing new opportunities, new owners open. There were 5 new retailers open next week. We're going to have new growers. New Jersey just turned on manufacturing. And so what you're going to start to see is development of products, both white labeled from the West Coast and also original products developing here in New Jersey. And branding. And a type of branding that you're going to see that's going to have sort of an East Coast New Jersey flavor that we really haven't seen in this market yet. This is one of the richest, most populous markets in the free world. And so one of the reasons why cannabis, esports, and other types of industries want to be here, whether it's Atlantic City or in this corridor, is because of that fact. There's tremendous wealth, there's tremendous population, and there's a very well-educated populace, very well-educated workforce here. So the ability to tap that, whether it's for a manufacturing base or technological base, there's a lot here that Jersey has to offer and Atlantic City has to offer specifically. Now, that isn't going to happen on its own. The regulator has its own ideas on where it wants to go, and sometimes takes too long. The regulator has been pressed by the legislature and advocates alike in the industry to get better, to get faster. And so RCRC has gone from really standing up an entire regulatory structure and now creating a whole new industry to really starting laser focusing on new concepts and ideas. I mentioned home delivery, wholesale and distribution. If you're going to have large scale manufacturers wanting to be able to deliver to retailers all around the state, you need to create a distribution network. It doesn't exist in our state right now. It's going to, and it's going to create an opportunity now for new jobs, for new industry to service that market. So we will see wholesale and distributor licenses being offered this year. We're going to see home delivery licenses in the cannabis space in New Jersey offered this year. And like I said, we're going to see an explosion of new products in New Jersey offered this year. Now, the exciting part about the cannabis industry here is it's not one size fits all. In other jurisdictions, we've seen some challenges. We've seen only big players that have come in and dominated a market in certain jurisdictions. And Jersey had that for a while. They had something called MSOs, multi-state operators that came in. There were large cannabis corporations that formed in legalization states across the nation and then have acquired other companies and built major empires. There's nothing wrong with that. These folks built what they built over time. They put a lot of capital in with a lot of risk. I represent some of these folks. They're on a legal end, and we're proud to do so. But it's also not what New Jersey and other jurisdictions have contemplated. Jersey has wanted to make this a more Jersey flavor effort with Jersey players, with Jersey residents, more mom and pop, akin to what we've seen more in the craft beer industry, and that's occurring now. And so the new rubric that was established in the 22 enactment bill really creates an opportunity now for new entrepreneurs partnered with venture capital or other types of investment and developing their own brands. Now, it's very limited in what you can do in New Jersey right now, and we're going to see some modification. We've already seen change of law occur. And that's the important part, and I'd say for both industries now that they need to be working on. You're either moving forward or you're moving back. You're never kind of staying in the middle. And so where Jersey has been is allowing the regulator in the cannabis space for a very long time to build up a head of steam and develop this cannabis experiment here. The legislature is poised to jump back in again now this fall in the winter to provide some guidance back to the regulator on where it wants it to improve. For example, on speed, I think on communication with its license ease and doing a better job of transitioning from we're going to build a new industry to we're going to help service a new industry now. The framework for the industry has been built. Now they've got to start delivering on successes. But there's challenges to that. There's challenges to investment. There's challenges to attracting in the financial support that's necessary. You cannot go to a bank and take out a loan if you want to run a cannabis business. It's very, very difficult. In fact, dealing with payrolls, dealing with any type of tangentially related business become difficult. And we've seen an explosion of third-party service companies that have jumped in that space to say, we have an idea and we can help service this industry. And so the ancillary side to the cannabis industry and the support structure has blossomed now too. And getting a handle around that and allowing that to mature and blossom, but also allowing for that in a regulatory structure so that the cannabis companies have certainty and know that this is where the world is going and where we're headed. Now, the challenge becomes there is still no certainty at the federal level. And as I've transitioned into this world over the last decade in the private sector, it's an interesting viewpoint into government from the outside. When you're sitting inside a government, you don't necessarily see all the different challenges that industries are facing. You're guessing to some extent. You may be listening to folks that are coming in, but you're trying to look at this from your viewpoint out rather than their viewpoint in. And if there's one thing that I've learned in any interaction between industry and government, it's having some degree of certainty of what's going to happen, some foundation that you're standing on so that you can make proper investment or at least plan. I mean, we do permitting work on a variety of issues on a regular basis, and we're knocking on the doors of places like the Department of Environmental Protection or the Department of Transportation. And my spiel there on a regular basis is, please just give us a yes or no. The maybes are the killers, right? No's you can adapt and you can move on. Yeses are obviously the best thing that you can get, but it's the death by maybes that occur. And far too often in industry, without certainty and without government standing with certainty and saying this will happen or this will never happen, it's really a challenge to invest and dig in and expand. That's why I think the explosion in both esports and also in cannabis, in spite of the lack of certainty in some areas, has been nothing short of amazing. But we have to be vigilant. And so this happened all through acts of the legislature and acts of the people. In some ways, we had the constitutions of our state amended to effectuate new laws. Right? The people went to the ballot and they spoke. It's a rare occurrence, but it happens. And now the challenge is to keep that momentum and keep that success moving. And so I would say for the upcoming year in both spaces, particularly around Atlantic City, watch what happens here next. Because what you're going to see, if any of what we've heard from the industry leaders in the casino space, the industry leaders in the cannabis space, the industry leaders in esports gaming and the like, and our governmental leaders, is these are places that they want to invest. These are places they want to change. So what am I looking for as someone now that works with industry in these spaces? I want to see more cannabis places open. I want to see more products on the shelves, Jersey-based. I want to see a diversity of the types of products and the types of experiences here in this environment that will accentuate what's already going on in this entertainment venue. I want to see more esports gaming competitions going on in New Jersey. I want to see more esports efforts going on at the local level, from high schools to colleges, all the way up. It's the training ground for where we're going. The continued implementation at the higher ed level on training programs, the reinvestment from the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, both in cannabis and in esports gaming, and attention to the intangibles. The reinvestment in this city will be for naught if we don't figure out the international airport. Because the international airport is a gateway for everyone, not just those that have proximity to get here by a vehicle, or those that want to pop in online, which we welcome. The ability to get here, and as my colleague said, to be here, be present, is conditioned upon our ability to actually get here. And that is an easy one to solve. And that is not specific to this industry. That is not specific to cannabis. It's not even specific to the hotels and the casino gaming interest. It's in spite of all of it. It is a fantastic resource for us. And it is something that, thankfully, there has been attention in recent years paid towards that crown jewel. It is a fantastic resource. And if you haven't had the experience, you can fly somewhat regionally now, mostly to Florida and other places. And it's honestly one of the best flight experiences you'll have if you have an ability to fly in and out of AC International. I would absolutely encourage you to do it because it's so easy to do comparatively to some of the other surrounding airports. Now, the last part I just want to hit upon is where are we headed collectively in our government? Well, I mentioned to you that today is election day. I think the good news, you hear a lot about partisan politics. I'm a Democrat. I spend my time now not sparring online. I was an embarrassing situation with my teenage sons and Fortnite, which I'll never, ever, ever play again. I spend my time fooling around on a cable news channel called Newsmax, which is basically to the right of Fox News as a Democratic strategist on a regular basis. But I come as a normal Democrat. I come as a moderate, and we need more of those. But I have good news for you, whether it's cannabis, whether it's gaming, whether it's the industry, whether it's jobs in the economy. Those are sexy bipartisan topics. It doesn't matter who's in office. Those are things that are at the top of the ballot. I don't care which poll you're looking at. Jobs in the economy are at the top of every ballot, whether it's a Republican poll or a Democratic poll. That's what's governing what our political leaders are looking at. And these jobs and this economy are real. So I don't know, my colleague, Billy Pasquarel, who's smarter on this stuff than I'll ever be, grew up in this political world. He'll be on your next panel. We're chatting about this in a little bit. The good news is the yeoman's work that's gone on by the leaders in this industry have made this bipartisan. So in this district right now, leaders like Vince Palestina, a Republican, Don Guardian, the former mayor, who's a Democrat. These are the elected legislators for this district right here. They may not win today's election, right? I don't know if that's going to happen, but whomever is in these seats knows two things. That in order to get reelected, they need to produce jobs in the economy. And here, this is the future. So I feel really emboldened that both with the cannabis side of the house, esports gaming generally, in this state, these are bipartisan, significantly supported initiatives that know no home on either party. Whether we have a Democrat in office helming our state government, the most powerful governor in all the land across the nation, or a Republican, this will be a focus. Cannabis and the explosion of the entertainment venue that is Atlantic City and a focus towards esports gaming. All of these things will be realities. That's the good news, regardless of what ends up happening come today's cycle. So if you haven't voted here today, and you are able to do so, I'd encourage you to do that. If you're online watching us at home and you're in New Jersey, I'd also encourage you to get out to the polls if you can. And if you're online across the world or across the nation, keep an eye on what happens here and across the nation tonight. We have a couple other races going on, but I think the good news for New Jersey, cannabis is on the rise, esports gaming is on the rise, Atlantic City is on the rise, and I thank you so much for the time and the opportunity to be here and join you today. I look forward to joining you in the future. Thank you.
We're going to do a 15-minute break. That was Bill Caruso. Thank you so much for those words. And we will see you online here again in about 15 minutes.